Are you good? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Presentation of petitions and other communications to the council. Liliana Geyer. Thanking the council for sponsorship for bullying prevention. Clarence Ball, comments regarding rezoning on Moldwood Drive. Teresa Bettis, addressed the city's need and duty to support affordable housing. Greenlee Yeager, Miss Jubilee Team, Miss Alabama Teen, and breast cancer awareness. Fred Wheeler, promote motorcycle safety and driver awareness. Timothy Hollis, challenges and recommendations for mobile housing income standards. Reggie Hill, housing, public affordable revitalization, economic development, major projects, budgeting, ARP, performance contracts, Parks and Rec Department, parks, amenities, and facility usage, and legal procedures. Resolutions held over. 01589, authorize agreement with Alabama Pool Works for pool chemistry maintenance services. 01590, authorize Public Works cooperative agreement and construction certification with Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners for the City of Mobile for One Mobile project. 01591, authorize agreement with Gorham Air Conditioning for West Regional Library chiller replacement. 08593, approved purchase order to CDW Government for network wireless access point switches and transceivers. 08594, approved purchase order CDW Government for network switches transceivers. 08595, approved purchase order to Jackson Creek Manufacturing for animal transport trailer. 21596, authorized contract with Diallo agreeing to provide prevention and intervention services to students in Mobile County Public Schools. 47597, consider vacation fee for as a condition of the vacation of city right-of-way located on the west side of Knollwood Drive, just north of Medical Park Drive. 60.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Arnold.
we'll just table that one. If you don't mind. We're not vacating the right of way. We voted last week to not vacate it.
50, 598, 599, authorized settlement agreement and release of claims. 01603, rescind resolution 01438, adopted March the 11th. 01604, authorized agreement with Alabama Department of Transportation for I-10 Mobile River Bridge and Bayway project. Ordinance is being introduced. 25018, amend Chapter 25, Article 1, Garbage and Trash, Section 5, Household Garbage, and Article 3, Enforcement, Section 33, Penalties,
Mr.
Mobile
Wood.
City Code.
Yeah, Mr. Woods.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to kind of touch base real quick on this one. Obviously, in the past 12 months, we've amended Chapter 25, and kind of after much discussion and many Public Services Committee meetings, we got to a point where we felt comfortable about passing Chapter 25, knowing that we would probably have to kind of come back around and correct and fix a couple things. And basically, what this is doing is really kind of addressing three things. Spelling out a time you can put your garbage cart out, and a time that it's got to be back to your house. Right now, it says the language in the ordinance as it exists is not before 6 a.m. collection day, and then it must be in by 11:59 p.m. collection day. So what this one does is spells out that you can put your garbage cart out at the curve no earlier than 5 p.m. the day before, and it must be in by 6 a.m. the morning after collection day. And really what that's doing is in theory or by ordinance, it's spelled out, but in reality, people are already putting their garbage cart out before they go to bed. I know there's been several times that I've been caught in the shower and I hear the garbage truck coming in. So it's just common practice to go ahead and putting it out. While it hasn't been ticketed widely across the board, there have been some warnings, especially in some areas that I do know about, because that's one of the first things I hear when I walk neighborhoods. Also, it lowers the fine for just leaving your cart out from $250 to $50. Kind of make that more tolerable when it comes to for a first offense. And then also, let's just say that you're a repeat offender and you have to go see a judge about this. The penalty of $350 is still on there. Community service can still happen, but I did remove the language of per this ordinance. I did remove the language of going to jail for up to 3 months, because I'll be honest with you, leaving your garbage cart out, I don't think you should go to jail for 3 months. So, but that's really just wanted to touch on that. There's a couple of amendments that I do need to make, or changes I do need to make for next week, just to kind of finish out and that some of y'all pointed out. But this is just the first read. So thank you.
Anyone else? And yes, question towards the administration. Y'all good with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Madam Clerk?
Consent resolutions being introduced, 09605, transfer funds from District 1 discretionary account to Mobile Parks and Recreation to assist with the Cinco de Mayo celebration for the Therapeutic Recreation Center. 60, 606, 607, and 608 are determined appropriations to Trinity Gardens Community Civic Club, Prince of Peace Parish, Mobile Chapter Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, serve a public purpose, and approving payment. CIP resolutions being introduced, 09609, transfer funds from Capital Project D1 Mobile CIP Greenway Initiative to Capital Project D1 US 45 median improvements, $600,000. 21610, authorized contract with Isaiah Engineering for Figures Park Community Center mechanical improvements, $40,850. 21611, authorized contract with McCrory and Williams for repair and stabilization of erosion areas at Azalea Golf Course and 12 Mile Creek, $56,900. Resolutions being introduced, 01612, rescind resolution 01793, adopted November 10th, 2020, and allocate $1,500,000 to capital improvements reserved in the Capital Improvement Fund.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reynolds?
this is for that Nevius Road extension. So where we stand with that currently is that we're essentially just scrapping that plan or idea for now.
Yeah, that was a joint venture intergovernmental agreement between us and the county. And so we were going to participate in the building of that road. My understanding is that project is not going forward. And so we're reallocating that money.
Can you tell me why it's not going forward?
Well, it originally, Bess Rich was the one that was representing that district at the time. She wanted to put in curb and gutter drainage sidewalks to build it to a city standard, which was not the project intent. And it made the project so expensive that they could not proceed.
If there was these other, those barriers your name, if those were removed, what's the possibility or likelihood of the project continuing forward, where you just went to the winged slopes or on the aprons and all?
Yeah, they were going to build it to the same standard that the current Nevis Road is. But I guess that's more of a question between Nick and the county engineers on whether or not they want to provide that extension again.
Yeah, and how far west did it go?
Yeah. Nick?
All the way to Schillinger's, to just to Siley? Okay.
In June of 22, the estimates were over $5 million over and above what had been budgeted for it. The unfortunate challenge is where existing Nevis ties into Hillcrest. If you extended on across, what they were proposing to do was kind of following a bottom, so to speak. So the road was being proposed to be built in a very challenging piece of that property, which of course made the cost go way up, as opposed to shifting it way over into the better property, which would have had an offset interchange to get through there. So, it was a complicated, difficult location, and the cost was just very expensive. And then, all of our costs of road construction in the last 4 or 5 years has probably doubled, and that's really what was happening there.
Yeah.
So there's a large amount of property that would be available for residential use. And so the property owners were trying to get between the county and the city, and this probably has been going on for about 7 years. I'm just guessing at that a little bit, trying to get the property owners first to get them aligned, and the county and the city to get aligned. But as we're along, and I don't know that some point, it seemed like maybe the property owners, other than contributing the property, could have contributed something else to the building of the road. And it just didn't happen, okay? And so there was nobody really pushing it. As far as a future need for the city, one day it could be a very viable project. It just didn't hit the priority for pushing forward with it compared to other projects.
Mr. President,
Mr. Quinn.
I only had one question. I couldn't remember where the city limit ended out there. Is that section of Nevis inside the city now?
It is. Yeah.
When that road was built, wasn't it built by the county?
Oh, I'm sure it was.
So when it was originally built, was it built to the city standard?
No,
So that's our problem there, right?
that's right. It's built to a county standard.
Okay, so it's,
But there were parts of Nevis Road, I think last year or something, y'all
that we,
annexed in.
that's right. We annexed a lot of that in, but those streets and roads out there aren't built to the city standard. My question is, and I don't know if the mayor was alluding to this when he said we all need to get on the same page. Are we asking the county now to start building where they're in such close proximity to the city, to where in the future, if there's an annexation, that their roads and infrastructure and their subdivisions are now at city center? Are we not asking that?
No, we have not.
But I mean, that's my question, because we're assuming roads that aren't to our standards that the citizens are going to ask us to maintain and manage. That's why I'm asking that question. That was the only question I had.
Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. Josh.
And Chief Soap Barber, just for clarification, the county match or the county money that was set aside for the Nevis Road extension, I mean, that money, that ship sailed already. It's been at least 2 years since they took that and reallocated their money. So there's not a pot of county money per se sitting out there.
They have two pay-as-you-go allocation from previous pay-go programs that are allocated to it. That's something that they'll have to take up and deal with. But yeah, that money's gone.
And then also too, if I remember correctly, this is on the MPO 2050 plan, I believe. I mean, it's at least, it's not that it's going to happen before then, or not that, there's plans for it, but I mean, it is this isn't off the table forever per se.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Like the mayor said, I mean, it's a very good place for future development. Just the road was expensive in its location that it was proposed to be built in.
And I mean, just represent District 6, I would be a huge advocate for doing the project, but I do realize in the discussions with residents, do realize that a lot of that land, I know there's some challenges. I think Ma's water line ends right at Nevis Road for the most part. So I know there's some challenges to develop that in that area, but I do think eventually as growth happens, it will be developed, and hopefully we can pull that trigger at that time.
If you're familiar with where Nevis comes into Hillcrest now, and if you drive it or notice it, there's some slopes that are just extremely steep there. That's what that road would end up with, as it kind of navigates that lower topography there, and so it's very challenging construction.
I actually rolled into that ditch one night, rolling off a hill, putting a sign up. So I'm very familiar with that slope.
One more point about this is that other than opening up a lot of property for residential use, it would do a lot for traffic congestion out there. And so at some point, the traffic congestion, may be driving, pushing the train on this.
All right, Madam Clerk.
01613, authorize amendment 2 to the agreement with WSP for Mobile Area Stormwater Mapping and Resiliency Planning, $549,920.28 additional.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Ms. Reynolds.
this amendment amends the phase 1, I guess, or step 1 of this, and addresses trees apparently. And then there are these other phases that are going to be done, it seems. What is the usefulness of this? I mean, is this going to be a part of our code per se?
Good morning. Thanks for
morning.
the question. So this is part of a grant that we have from the Restore Act. These are Bucket 3 funds. The title of the grant is Mobile Area Stormwater Mapping and Resiliency Planning. There's 2 parts of this project. There's mapping all the stormwater features. You approved an amendment for that from an increase that we got from Restore a couple months ago. This is the second part of it, which is creating manuals that are updates to our stormwater manual. The first part of the grant was only able to fund one volume of the manual that we said we were going to do. They increased the amount of money to allow us to complete the project last year, and that's what this is. So this amendment finishes all of the volumes. Our stormwater manual that we have now is old. It's from the 80s. This updates it to current practices. The first volume that we finished last year was low impact design, very well received. We did training with developers and engineers and things like that, landscape architects. This includes a variety of other things. There's going to be a traditional practices manual for design. There's going to be hydrology and drainage systems manuals and tree planting guidance and for actual low impact design. So it's a companion to our stormwater manual.
I guess my question is that when somebody is going to build a project, that engineer is going to build it in the most cost-effective way for their client, not necessarily following our guide.
So this is optional. We provide training for it. It is not mandatory, but it's information if someone does want to improve their water quality practices, utilize low impact design practices, they have something that they can go by that we can show them how to do it.
Is there going to be an effort to try to modify some of our stormwater standards in construction and design so those engineers can sort of be required to rope in some of these standards?
That is not part of this project.
Not part of this project, but say us legislatively, we have the ability to read this once completed and then say, well, we can implement this section as part of our design standards. Could that happen?
I would say that the council has the ultimate final say. When they build a new subdivision, for instance, if they're not following the standards that are already in place, which are pretty stringent, concrete pipe, not plastic pipe, not following some of the other low impact developments, but basically not designing a subdivision that can withstand our weather events, the engineering department's not going to recommend it to y'all for acceptance. But at the end of the day, y'all accept the streets for acceptance. So I can tell you when they work with us, they sometimes don't like it because we're pretty tough on them, and we identify what's part of the city system versus what's part of might be a private system. And we're making certain that they build systems that can withstand our weather events and incorporate materials that are appropriate. So no plastic pipe, no some of these other lower, cheaper things. When he gets to the private property, we can't tell a private individual he or she can't use, a lesser quality material in their private development because they end up being the ones, accepting the maintenance for that.
Can you give me a scenario where this will be used?
Probably in helping some of the local designers understand the outfalls. When those neighborhoods going through a series of pipe systems and it gets to an outfall, to say a natural creek, and where historically they may have just designed a concrete flume that dumps out to the natural creek. Well, they'll use that manual. They might have to back up 200, 300 feet, sacrifice a lot or two, and make something that's more natural, that lets that hardened infrastructure then blend in with the natural infrastructure. So we have that all over the city where we've got these closed drainage systems that are getting the water away from our roads and our houses very quickly, but then it hits the natural system and it starts causing damage, starts, backing up, tearing up a lot of these large ditches. And so it's, that's just an example of how that manual would help.
I think we, especially since this is paid for, that we move forward with doing it. I just worry that the usefulness is not necessarily going to be there if we're just depending on somebody out of the kindness of their heart, to.
Well, it doesn't work that way. The consultants that are designing projects for developers are coming through, one, the planning commission, then two, ultimately the engineering department for reviews of their plans. And it's not an easy process. I mean, they're being held to a pretty hard standard, and certainly, we're advising them. We're not going to recommend it to this body until it's able to withstand the events that it's been designed for. Most of our local folks that are designing subdivisions get that because they know it's going to come back to them. If they don't harden that infrastructure appropriately. So,
Yeah. Mr. Carroll.
Nick, is it not true that most of the civil engineers and site designers now do design for the needs of our city as far as storm water runoff.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
right now, I think, I read this, I think most, if not all, are meeting the requirements that we're trying to put into writing for them. Is that?
Yeah, I would say what we do is we try to encourage them not to meet the standard, but significantly exceed it. At the end of the day, there's a risk and reward. They've got to find the balance. But I'll tell them, like, look, you can either take your design to a much hardened, much more substantial standard, or you're going to be fixing it and repairing it again, and you're potentially going to be involved in litigation around it. So most of the, I mean, I'm gonna go as far as saying all of the designers, they get that. So they typically are all going over and above.
They also provide us with all the calculations.
That's correct.
And everything that we need
Yeah.
to meet that standard. When I read this, I took it to be for the outside developer that's coming into our area that wasn't familiar with what we do, like this Texas guy that we may have come in and do these 30 houses that, isn't familiar with our system and how we do things. That's
Yeah.
how I took it.
Yeah, that's correct.
The other thing is that, to Ben's point, since most, if not all of the designers are currently doing this, it wouldn't hurt. And I couldn't really dig into this over the last week. It wouldn't hurt that if we did update our system, just like we would bring up our building codes.
It's exactly like that.
So if we were to do this the same way that we do bring up our building codes, I don't see a problem with it whatsoever. And doing it this way, I'm assuming we're doing the same thing as if though we were bringing up our building codes to match what the current standard of construction and deliverables for site civil.
Yeah, that's correct. It's effectively the same thing as that, except you just, with drainage stuff, you don't necessarily have a code to do it. So it's really unique to each individual geographic area.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
08614, accept bid awards for limestone aggregate. 08615, approve purchase order CDW government for annual renewal of NetMotion remote access security software, $16,225. 08616, approve purchase order to Deere and Company for utility tractor for Parks Department, $68,224.65. 08617, approve purchase order to Technology International for heavy duty police barricades, $40,500. 08618, approve purchase order to truck equipment sales for trailer for public buildings, $16,074. 09619, reallocate funds from capital project CO 116 to capital improvement fund to various capital projects, $1,176,220.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Mr. O'Carroll,
I'll wait. Go ahead.
and then Mr. Reynolds.
When I went through this and I was looking at the various projects that were being reallocated, I noticed that we're reallocating another $486,000 to the parking garage. Why is that? So what?
Sam's here. This is to put a surveillance camera system in.
Oh, I thought, didn't she just read 06619?
I did.
She did just read 06619. Yeah, it's $486,000 being reallocated to the parking deck coming from this. I thought that all funds were already allocated to the parking deck and that we were 100% funded.
The construction was. This is a put in a surveillance. All the fiber is there, but we're going to go ahead and put in a surveillance system. Is that
So
correct?
this is
Yeah,
change
the-
order to what we're
Yes,
already doing?
Yeah, when the design was originally done, the city did not know at that point what kind of cameras they wanted because they were going to upgrade citywide on the security system. So the cameras were excluded from the construction. So this is to add the cameras. There's 130 cameras going in the parking garage.
That's fine. I guess the proper procedure would be to have the funding in place before the request for change orders made to the council. Because it seems like we're allocating money for a change order that increases the value of the contract. And the only person or group that can change the contract is the council. So that's not, well, I mean, we have to approve the changes to the contract, right? That's the council. We have to approve the change order, correct?
So it is always going to depend on it's always going to depend on whether it's over a certain percentage. And so if it's over, if it's over a certain percentage, then, and that's not over this percentage, but we do need the council approval to make a transfer, and that's only on recommendation of the mayor. So it's a two-step process here. And I think you're accurate in that the council has to approve this transfer, not accurate in the council has to amend the contract. That's an executive function.
Well, $486,000 in addition to what we do, that's a pretty big number,
It
even
is.
though it's not above the 10% rule. And just to say that it can be done executive, that's a lot of money coming from the city. Whether or not council doesn't have the right to approve the contract or change the contract, I think a change order in this sense for the council to see it without it being in this form, because you could have easily bypassed this if you didn't read everything that was on the agenda this week, and the council would have never seen it go. We would look back and say, what happened to that $500,000 and why did it go? And that's why I'm making that statement. I'm not pointing a finger. I'm just saying that that's a lot of money just to be on the reallocation without the council saying, oh, this is an amendment or a change to a contract.
That is why it is before you, because we are legally required to put this part of it before you and talk about it in a transparent fashion so that the public knows, because it is a lot of money.
But
And
not
so-
as a change order.
Right, because that change order is not legally required to come before you. And so we usually err on the side of caution and try not to put things before you that we don't necessarily have to. That would probably bog down your agenda more so than often, but having a discussion about it publicly is something that we need to necessarily do. That's something that you have to do. And so there's no problem with asking that question. I just want people to understand the legal significance of it.
I know we got an answer, but I think that was a big chunk of change. At some point in time, I think we might want to look at the change order terms in the contract and see what those are, just for sake of responsibility of this council, going forward, just so that we know what the proper process is and what the proper amounts are. That 10% number on some jobs could only be $100. But on this job, 10% of the total value of that's a whole lot of money, which then says that the council may not ever see a change order or change in the amount of the contract as it grows during the process of construction. We could get up to several $1 million if they all come in less than 10%, which then is like, what happened? Where's the accountability from the council? That's what I'm stating.
I think that is a more than accurate statement. And I think this council, any member of this council could always ask for that information. And we'd be happy to provide it for you because you're legally required to see it. And you're right, you're responsible for it. And so to the extent you want to ask that question, we're more than happy to answer.
Mr. President,
Mr. Rowe.
since we have our wonderful construction manager here, Sam with Volkert, I think, Sam, can you give us an update while you're here on the kickoff date or start date of Civic Center, when we're going to be cutting the ribbon in front of the parking deck, so on and so forth? On time, on budget, all the things we need to know.
Okay. On the parking deck, we're currently scheduled to open it for the core parking on the end of May. Final completion will be in probably mid-June. Other than the issue for the cameras, we're on budget. The arena, we have broke ground. Currently, we're moving the surcharge pile out of the way so foundations can begin. So that work has started. Of course, we're so early into it. We are still on budget and on schedule for our end date of January 27.
When does that road get closed down? Is that way down the road?
Claiborne?
Yeah.
That's involved with the bridge project, but yes, that's probably a couple of years out before they close that.
Drilling rigs, start to do the power.
The pile subcontractor should be mobilizing this week, and they'll start test pile program probably next week. So, and that test pile program will take a couple of weeks because they got to put in the piles, they got to cure, then we have to test them to make sure they comply with the bearing capacity. And then once that's done, then they'll start the production foundation piles.
And they're gonna drill those piles like they did at the parking deck.
Yeah, actually, it's the same method, same contractor.
Instead of pounding them in the ground like.
Yeah, we went with the displacement piles because of the historic neighborhood and the surrounding old properties. We didn't want to be driving piles with a pile hammer.
Pretty sure everybody would really appreciate that.
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Day?
Hey, Sam, I want to come back to Claiborne Street for a minute. So when will Claiborne Street be closed?
I cannot give you a definitive date because that depends on the bridge project schedule. But what they have told us, it will probably be about 2 years before they do that portion of the project.
Of the bridge project?
Yes. We aren't doing that. The city's not doing that.
Right. But I guess I know I was unfamiliar with the fact that we would be closing Claiborne Street for the bridge project. I thought it was going to be further down towards Virginia Street.
The Claiborne, when the bridge project is done, there'll be a new off-ramp that comes off the interstate, which actually comes down on top of Claiborne to tie to Canal. So Claiborne will not be a through street at that point. It will be rerouted under the new interstate. I'm pointing, I'm sure y'all. It will reroute under the interstate and tie back into Water Street.
Under the bridge.
Yeah, under the bridge and tie back to Water Street.
Tie back to Water Street.
Yeah, on the east side of the interstate.
So they make a loop?
No, not a loop. It'll just be turned to the
left.
east, go under the interstate and connect to Water Street.
Okay.
I guess the best word to say, Joel, is that Claiborne we don't restrict access to it. It dead ends at the backside of the new arena, and it turns left if you're going south, and it turns into the Water Street that is now behind the Condi area over there where you go back, and it turns right again and comes back onto Canal Street. The drawings show a diamond exchange there, which I think they're changing based on what I saw last. They're changing that exchange right there because of the new design of the bridge, and then the bridge continues to go east. Will already have turned east right there, but the new off ramp is what causes that change there. So Claiborne won't go all the way through; it'll just dead end and then turn left. Thank you. Well, it affects Church Street East and down the bay, so I've been keeping a really close look at it.
All right, Madam Clerk?
21620, authorized contract with Thomas Industries for cruise terminal parking deck repairs, $428,880. 21621, authorized contract with Waste Pro USA for dumpster services at various city locations, $98,000. 35622, authorized extension of temporary site lease with New Cellular Wireless for installation of new cell facility at the cruise terminal. 60623, authorized settlement agreement and release of claims. 21631, correct resolution 21571, adopted on April 15, 2025. Call.
Vice President?
Yeah, let's go back to CIP and see if you all will agree to waiving the rules on 21610. That's just over almost $41,000. And then in the resolutions being introduced, we have a few 08615, 08617, and 08618. Everybody agree with those?
Okay.
Okay.
Call for public hearings, 41624, call for public hearing to consider a conditional use permit for property located at 2411 Venetia Road, scheduled May 27th. 41625, call for public hearing, 416 625, 41, 626, 27, 28, 29, and 630 are calling for public hearings to amend Article 5, Section 64 4C2 and Section 64-54D neighborhood meetings, Section 64-312 parking and loading, Section 64-8-2 lot of record, Section 64-5-8 previously approved planning approvals and plan unit developments, recording and record keeping requirements of Section 64-5-5, 64-5-6, 64-5-7, and amending Section 64-5-8.1, terminating a previously approved plan unit development, all of the Unified Development Code scheduled May 27th. Announcements.
Council? Okay. Anything from administration? All right, we'll see each other at 10:30.
Hey, TJ, you're right with that conditional use over on Venetia Road? That's the first short-term rental. That's gonna be your district.
Who district?